And thank you for tuning in. I'm the host Giovanni Alexander of Local National Global. I am pleased to announce that we are finally back on the air after a few years of hiatus there. And this time we plan to stay on the air. So I had a few technical difficulties there and a few other issues, but uh, I'm very grateful to announce that we're back and we're gonna stay on the air, cover all the issues that we used to. A little bit of background about L.N.G. We are primarily, when we started out in 2012, we started out as a talk show. And I intend to keep that during the pandemic. We had a little bit of struggle there trying to get everything up and running. But um, as if right now, March 28th, 2021, we are back on the air. And this is the very first episode. I'll cover a little bit about the things that I'll be talking about. This is primarily a policy talk show, and basically, um, I'll be talking about all the current events nationwide, and then of course, uh, name being local, national, global, we're going to be covering global events as they happen. So but I am extremely pleased that we're back on the air and we're able to give you our point of view and the issues that you all care about. So um, the first, um, let me give you a little bit about the show. When the show was on previously, we primarily covered everything in that happened in New Mexico. Um, and of course, our aim was to go national, and here we are today. So, we'll be covering all sorts of topics nationally and interviewing people from all 50 states and beyond. Um, um, so stay tuned, subscribe and push the like button. That way it helps the algorithms. And I think we're all kind of used to this by now. So um, I'll be covering the main topics there as far as what's dear to most Americans. And, for the time being, we'll go with the, current events that are happening right now with the crisis at the, the immigration crisis at the border. And naturally, we're not calling it the crisis because, um, it is not something that's occurring the first time. This happens pretty much every time we have an administration that is a little more understanding of the situation. Therefore, a lot of the migrants tend to head up north. That is something that I'm going to be covering periodically, of course. And the very first subject I wanted to cover as soon as we get going, and it'll be covered in many other episodes. So stay tuned for that. Is basically the healthcare issue. Healthcare is something that is extremely dear to me. I understand most Americans are you know suffering from the lack of healthcare and all the problems affiliated with it. What some in the media weren't talking about during the pandemic, being when the pandemic started, was the lack of care. We are basically a sick care system in this nation, unfortunately, and we need to kind of bring these issues out in the open so we can continue to talk about it. And as far as this show is concerned, on local, national, global, we'll be covering the healthcare quite a bit. So that is one of the key issues that is extremely dear to me because I know most Americans care about the healthcare situation we're in. So if you notice during the pandemic, the national media did not really cover um, why there was such a vast amount of people that were dying of of the coronavirus. They were covering the numbers that were dying, but they didn't give out the reasons, or they didn't want to cover because naturally the national media is you know kind of more biased towards those who are sponsoring them. So, whether it's CNN or Fox or MSNBC, all these channels, they have one thing in common: they have sponsors. I do not. So I would be covering things that you want to hear about. So my very first topic basically is healthcare. And yes, I'm going to go to immigration because we have a situation at the border, and it is kind of escalating at this point since Biden came in. Naturally, Biden is a lot more friendly, so we're going to have that influx of migrants heading up north. But that said, let me stick to the healthcare situation for the next few episodes as we start this show back up again. You notice during the beginning of the pandemic last year in March, everyone started talking about how this, how dangerous this pandemic is. When you look at the numbers that were being affected by this pandemic, it was clear to me and clear to many others out there, especially in the healthcare industry, that those who were being affected primarily had pre-existing conditions. And I don't want to keep harping on that, but we do not have a national healthcare system. And you will never hear this from the media, national media, because they are not willing to talk about it at this stage. I'm sure they have their reasons, but as I mentioned, they have their corporate sponsors, and that is not something that their corporate sponsors want us to hear, the general public, that is. So, so far, when you look at the numbers current, we're over 600,000 dead and several million infected. So, and if you compare that to the other nations, say Korea, Philippines, you can go to various other nations. You go to Japan, you go to New Zealand, Australia. You will not see nearly as many infected or deaths for that matter. So the point is that if we were a preventative care society, we had socialized healthcare, and that word, by the way, socialized, is such a taboo word for a lot of people. But you're going to hear that the socialized word on this show quite a bit, because it is something that all the other industrialized nations have as a system, a socialized care. We already have a socialized care, which is called Veterans Administration, the Veterans Care. So we already have a social. All we have to do is expand that, or take Medicare and expand that. And everyone recalls whenever Bernie's running for office, he always brings up the single payer system, and you'll hear all these different words thrown out there by the media at that time: single payer, socialized medicine. What we need is a collective healthcare system. Now, regardless of what you call it, it's irrelevant. The thing is that we are a sick care system at the current moment, and this is why we had such a high number of deaths due to the coronavirus, which of course, was preventable. What I would like to talk about is the benefits of actually having a single payer system, or a socialized system, whether you were to expand Medicare and cover a lot more people than are covered right now. Remember, a few years ago, we're talking about 50 million people that did not have health care. This is prior to Obamacare coming into office, coming into the system. or Affordable Care Act. Fast forward, Obamacare or Affordable Care Act was basically unpopular because of how what it included. And naturally, when the exchanges got in the middle of Affordable Care Act, the ACA, it kind of basically messed the whole thing up. So, it, and I understand that it was a start, and this is something that uh, we had out of the Obama administration, and we were actually hoping to get something a little better and a little more um, friendlier to the public. Right now, there are holes where people are not covered. If you're a certain above a certain income range, you don't get covered, and there is issues with the prescription drugs and things like that. So the best thing that we could do is start to restart this conversation again. And then on this show, on Local, National, Global, we're going to be covering healthcare quite a bit. I'm going to be talking to a lot of different individuals from all around the state, from New Mexico and from other states, be it from Texas, from New Jersey, New York, California. Massachusetts has their own kind of a socialized care, which Romney instated, I think, many years ago. So I'm going to be talking to people in other states. This is primarily a talk show, so naturally we're still going to adhere to that and bring as many elected officials as we possibly can. And the second part of the show is, of course, opinion and precisely my opinion. So I'm going to be talking on a wide range of issues there, and I hope all of you would be tuning in as the show progresses. And so let me end this thing by saying with a couple of other topics that I wanted to cover. Well, first was the healthcare, second was immigration issue, and then the third most important to most Americans is the higher education and the cost of it and the student debt crisis that we're in. And that is a real crisis, by the way. This is not something that is going to get solved in the near future. This is something that the public has to show the outcry for the policymakers to actually change something and either give us student loan the debt forgiveness or have some other policies implemented where it actually serves the nation better. Because going to 4 years in higher education, coming out of debt, or going for your master's or PhD or what have you, and being eyeballs in your debt is not the way for us to go forward as a nation. I think it is a matter of national security, and I think I'll get into the nuts and bolts of it as I cover the national crisis that we're facing as far as higher education and student debt, specifically student debt crisis there, which is over $1 trillion, by the way. So these are the things that I'll be covering, and many other issues there. And as they come up, we're going to talk about it at some point. I think maybe in the next few episodes, I'll be talking about where both of the parties are headed, whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans, or whether we're going to have a third party in the near future. So that's also something that I'll be covering and talking a lot about. The future of the parties, both Democrat and Republican. I am an independent, so right now at this moment, I am not registered as anything specific, just throwing that out there. I am an independent. However, my histories, I'm very progressive on a lot of the issues, and I talk a lot about, naturally, when I talk about my own point of views, they kind of you would say lean to the left. However, I consider myself more of an independent at this point, And the point of views that I give you would be more of the centrist type of opinions. So that said, I'm very pleased to announce that we're back on the air. And just like our name suggests, local, national, global. We're starting out in Albuquerque, New Mexico. That said, we're going to go national and eventually go global. Even when I had the talk show previously, we were watched pretty much everywhere. I had a relative in Australia, matter of fact, many years ago, explained to me or mentioned to me that he was watching me in Australia and sharing that there. So we are pretty global even back then. And right now we're going to focus on all the national topics, starting with healthcare, then we're going to go to immigration, and then to the student debt crisis. And then as the current event happens, I'm going to cover those and talk about those and give you my opinion. But the main bulk of the show is the variety of guests that we're going to invite. Now, of course, being the era of Zoom, we're going to bring guests from all over the nation, practically all over the globe. So, and when it's the healthcare, we're going to bring healthcare experts, elected officials. I want to talk about, you know, any changes to the healthcare system that they would like to add and bring up some points that would help the nation as far as us going forward. But the pandemic and the healthcare, they're both related. We need to talk about it. We need to kind of figure out why is it that we are at 600,000 dead in this nation and these other nations are not even facing anything close to it. And that's primarily because of the sick care system that we have currently and not a preventative care. And these are important to us. They're important to Americans. They're important to me, to my family, and to everyone I know. And it really don't make any difference where someone leans as far as their political point of views. Everyone knows someone that is needing health care, access to health care. So that said, this is my very first kind of a re-intro episode to let everyone know that we're back on the air as if March 28th, 2021. So click subscribe and push the like button. That way it helps the algorithm of the shows. And we're going to continue to produce a lot of good content there. That way you can, American public can benefit from it. And things that would not be covered by the national media is what my specific point is there. Because I am not controlled by any specific, any sort of an interest or any sort of a special interest or group or any type of sponsors or anything. We are self-financed or controlled. There is no other force controlling us in any way, specifically local, national, global. So thank you again for tuning in, and thank you for clicking on the video, and hope to have you join the show again. And we hope to bring you the content that you all want to see. So thank you for that. Everyone have a pleasant evening, day, or morning, whatever you're at, and depends on when you're watching it and where you're watching it within the United States or around the globe. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you again.